Ready to break the narrative? Get the real story with no filters and no apologies. Cut through the noise with real conversation, real conviction, and real news. It's time for Truth Without Spin. It's the Alex Marlow Show.
Hello, everyone. This is the Alex Marlow Show, and I am Alex Marlow, and I'm glad you're here. The first ever Alex Marlow Show on live national radio, also added to the weekday primetime lineup for the Salem News Channel. And I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a long time coming for me. I'll tell you a story about myself for those of you who are not familiar with me, and it'll be greatest hits for those of you who are. But I'll start with the desk I'm looking at right now, which is Larry Elder's desk. Larry Elder and I share a set here now at Salem in Glendale, California. And Larry was my first boss in the conservative movement. I was his intern just after high school, where I reached out to him to speak at my prep school, Harvard Westlake, and I was told by the school that he might not be an appropriate speaker for the school. Obviously, it was because of his politics. And that kind of got the political bug started in me, where the activist bug kicked in. What's going on here? Why, of all the left-wing voices we hear all the time, why can't this, to quote Joe Biden, a clean, articulate black man with conservative viewpoints, why can't he speak at this school? And he was the smartest guy I had ever heard on the radio, much smarter than a lot of my teachers, many of whom were very good. And they wouldn't let him come on. And I reached out to Larry. I told him the story. And he came right back to me and basically offered me an internship. And so I worked for him doing odd jobs, get his car washed, cleaning out his bookcase, but also researching his books, a book called Stupid Black Men, which got renamed What's Race Got to Do with It, I think, researching his columns, and occasionally helping out on his radio show, which was on KBC at the time. And now he's my colleague here at Salem. And that line item, me interning for Larry Elder, got me my first job with Andrew Breitbart, which I started in college as the first employee of Breitbart News. And now I'm editor-in-chief. I've been editor-in-chief for about 12 years. And because of that connection with Larry, Andrew, who was a fan of Larry's, grew up in Los Angeles area, understood that Larry's command on not just politics, but the culture, he thought, okay, I'll take a bet on this guy. And with that, I joined Andrew Breitbart's. At the time, it was a pirate ship, and now we've used that to change the world and change really how all of media is done. And at first, I was witness to him being the pioneer that he is, and then after that, got to partake myself and became editor-in-chief when I was 27 years old, and it's been a wild ride ever since. I also want to speak about where I'm sitting today. I'm sitting in the chair that was once sat by my friend, my mentor, and one of my heroes, Dennis Prager. This was Dennis's set. It's my set now, but it was Dennis's time slot as well for the radio audience. I listened to Dennis Prager every single hour of every single show for years on end. There were years where I would not miss a single minute of the Dennis Prager show, and getting to call him a friend, getting to visit him in his studio, getting to be able to talk about some of my research, my books, my reporting with him over the past few years to strike up a real friendship with him has been one of the treats of my life. And I'm so glad to hear him speaking again, even though we had this catastrophic paralysis. He's so sharp, he's so wise, and we need him now so much. And I'm looking forward to reconnecting with him and hopefully bringing some of his content to the show as well. But what I want to share with you today is what I have a vision for this hour on the radio, this hour on Salem News Channel every day, is this is going to be a hard-hitting news show. I'm going to offer you in the spirit of Andrew, in the spirit of Dennis, in the spirit of Larry, we're going to be happy warriors here. But I have to talk about my friend Charlie Kirk, who was on the radio in this exact slot up until his assassination. Those of you who know my history, are familiar with my weekly guest appearances on Charlie's show, know that one of my proudest accomplishments as editor-in-chief of Breitbart News is I was the first person to give Charlie that shot at national exposure. He had just started Turning Point. He was a teenager. He reached out to us with a scoop about bias in textbooks, and he said, do you guys want to report on this at Breitbart.com? And Joel Pollack, my colleague, and I said, you know what, actually, you should do it. You should write it up. You should be the citizen journalist in the spirit of Andrew Breitbart. It's exactly what Charlie did. And he hit lightning in a bottle. That first story took off like a rocket. All of a sudden, he's on Fox News. All of a sudden, he's on talk radio. All of a sudden, he's everywhere. And that's what gave him the bug. The same spark that I got from my internship with Larry Elder, Charlie got it at that moment, and he took it and essentially took over the whole conservative movement. It was a rapid rise, and he was taken from us in a cruel way way too young, and it is our obligation as friends of Charlie's, as believers in the MAGA cause, to carry that torch. And with this microphone, I'm going to do that each and every day. Charlie and I became close friends. Again, I was a weekly guest on his show. We confided in each other in so many issues. And he really was that high energy leader that we needed. He should not have been taken from us. But what we can all do collectively is we can work hard on behalf of his vision for an America First agenda for this country, for Judeo-Christian values being ascendant in this country, and of course, the love of the news. All of the people I'm talking about today have this affinity for the news, this love of the news, and that's really what's driven me and my tenure at Breitbart News as editor-in-chief. It is really remarkable to see the opportunity of what we can do with this radio time slot. I'm going to be able to highlight stories for you that I think that you weren't going to get anywhere else. I'm going to be able to, here's my value proposition. This is going to be a serious show. We're going to break news. This is going to be ground zero for MAGA information. We're going to do it in a happy way. We're going to have fun. We're going to have jokes. I'm going to try to entertain you as best I can with the spirit of Dennis, the spirit of Charlie, the spirit of Trump, and of course, the spirit of Andrew. But we're not going to play games here. A lot of maybe your favorite hosts, a lot of my friends even, have kind of leaned more towards, in the last year, gone towards performance art, provocateurism. I'm not here to do that. Now, I've managed a lot of people who are very good at those things, and I like it. I enjoy it. I'm entertained by the content. But what I want to give you guys every single day in the show, not games. We're not just going to court clicks. We're not just going to court shares. I'm going to give you the news. The news is what you're going to get in this show, and a deep analysis from great guests. Now, I'm going to fly solo today. It's too tight of a show. We got too much news to get to. We're going to be getting into Venezuela. We're going to be getting into Mamdani mayhem. The walls have closed in on Tim Walz. We just learned that he's going to be stepping down. We're going to get him. We're going to get all that on today's show. But what I'm trying to do here is try to save the country as best I can for my 4 children. I got 4 young children. They'll be featured on the show from time to time. And I'll tell you the stories about parenthood growing up when you have 4 jobs, as I do. But I'm doing this for them. I'm doing this because I believe in America. I believe our best days are in front of us. And it's only if we take up our torches, our pitchforks, whatever it is, and for me, it's a microphone, and we're able to go ride and activate. There's so much that I've learned in my tenure at Breitbart News because we were canceled. We were attacked before it was cool. We were the ones who were falsely called racist, falsely called anti-Semites, falsely called fake news. That's the whole history of it. The term fake news was Hillary Clinton attacking Breitbart. That's where the term came from. We were boycotted not because we were getting stuff wrong, but because we were telling the truth. And that whole time, in the spirit of Andrew, we were getting better at our jobs. We were reporting of the stories of tomorrow, today, from the crisis at our border with illegal immigration, from Brexit, to the rise of China and the threat it poses, to the rise of big tech and the threat it poses, to the most important story of the century thus far, the rise of Donald Trump. We were the first ones to see Donald Trump and take his candidacy seriously, take his ethos seriously, to understand that his contempt for the media, his wanting to stand up to China, his wanting to rip up NAFTA, his wanting to seal the border as essential American values. That's why so many of maybe your favorite personalities, from Steve Bannon to Ben Shapiro to the aforementioned Charlie Kirk, came through Breitbart. And they grew with us. And they were able to change the world in their own right. There's only one way to live, and that's as happy warriors, fighting for our causes, being those warriors that you need out there with our microphones or whatever our tools of the trade may be. And I'm going to be that for you. But I'm not going to lie to you. I want to build your trust. I want to build your friendship, and I'm going to trust you. We're going to have a hotline here. It's actually, we got one up today, 18-Prager-776. We got Dennis Prager's old number. We're getting my own number coming up. You can email me, aloha@alexmarlow.com, whenever you want. I'll be reading them throughout the show. I'll probably be responding throughout the show. I won't respond to everything, but I will read everything. But we're going to do 2 things today. We're going to do 2 things on this show. We're going to provide a hard-hitting news alternative for all of you who need the news and who want a warrior to fight for this country, but not by yelling at you, not by lecturing you, by having a conversation with you, the audience member. I want to earn that trust. And hopefully I'll entertain you when you're in traffic or doing the dishes or whatever it is you're doing. I'm Alex Marlow. This is the Alex Marlow Show. We're getting back into it right after this. Going to be talking some Venezuela, big news weekend, great way to start the year. Happy New Year. Thank you for being with me. Live from Burbank or Glendale. Are we saying Burbank or Glendale here? Salem Studios here AM 870 is our home base. Is that our biggest signal? Sean, we got to figure that out. I want to get that answer. The legendary Sean McConnell's with me as well. We got an amazing team. Part of the incentive to do these shows is the radio. You get a nice team with you. It's really fun to be in studio. Dennis Prager's old studio, looking at my colleague Larry Elder's desk, and we got a lot of hot news today, and I'm looking forward to bringing it to you. Let's start with the details of Venezuela. Here's what we know. Trump parachutes some guys in. 2 to 3 hours, no reported U.S. casualties, at least 40 deaths, including soldiers. Now, here's where things get interesting here. So these were Cuban security agents that were killed because the Venezuelan people do not back Maduro. This is what's interesting. Maduro has not been the legitimate president of Venezuela since 2018. And this is when he lost an election. He's had sham elections since then. But he has laid claim to the country, to leadership of the country, even though he's not been legitimate. And I find this to be remarkable when you see all the people over the weekend who are out there and suggesting that this is some sort of an assault on international order, UN treaties, International Criminal Court, whatever, this way and that. All this is completely absurd coming from the crowd that were lecturing us Americans on the importance of democracy. Well, I'll tell you, Nicolas Maduro, far from a democratic leader. He's an authoritarian autocrat, and he's actually the leader of a drug cartel. And this is another essential point here, is that he was the head of the Lost Souls cartel, which is a syndicate run by the Venezuelan military. That is how he laid claim to the country. So anyone who's clutching their pearls and is upset, the United States want to take out the bad guys, especially when they were threatened repeatedly by Marco Rubio, by Donald Trump, by others, suggesting that you need to rein in your drugs, you need to rein in the outsourcing of fentanyl to the United States of America, the human trafficking, the violence, the murders, all that stuff. Rein that in, or else you could have some problems. And when they defy us, when they stand up to us over and over again, remember, we're not dealing with a legitimate president. We are dealing with a dictator who runs a drug syndicate with his military. Who is the biggest supporter of Venezuela? This is very important. I got some audio on this coming up after the next break. China, the CCP. The CCP is their biggest supporter because the syndicate was giving them sanctioned oil illicitly trafficking oil to China. This is oil in our hemisphere. And this is something that is really noteworthy about President Trump, which is different from him, from any other prior president that I've seen in my lifetime, Democrat or Republican. He actually prioritizes our own hemisphere. He looks at Latin America as essential to our national security because that's our homeland. This is, relatively speaking, in terms of proximity, we're way more vulnerable if we see encroachment in our own hemisphere. Trump sees that, Rubio sees that, and this has been ignored, aside from some tough talk from Joe Biden's and Chuck Schumer's of the world of yesteryear. This has been ignored for so long, and yet we've never actually seen this before turn into policy. We have the tough talk. I'll play you some of that in a little bit. But overall, you see that Donald Trump sees, why is China here? Why is the CCP here taking this oil, getting it illicitly from a guy who shouldn't be president, who's running a drug cartel, who does not have the support of the people, but has basically bought off Cuban security? So we killed at least 32 Cubans. You know what was really a fun detail that I learned is that Maduro apparently left his wife behind and ran for his panic room. And that's where we got him. So we got him on his way to his panic room, said peace out to the spouse. And then we got him right before. We apparently read him his rights, according to Marco Rubio. And now we got him. He's here. And what comes next? What comes next could be messier, of course. So it is a regime change. So is this a regime change war? No, there's no war. We are in there for 2-3 hours. And I find this remarkable on the heels of regime change efforts that we've had in Iraq in particular, also Afghanistan, where we try for 20 years and fail. Well, we tried for 3 hours and succeeded in this instance, which is just amazing. And the footage that we have at Breitbart.com, you all should check out, just people just exuberant, wildly celebrating in the streets. The people were liberated. Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, they liberated the people of Venezuela. Now, what comes next is going to be messy, and we're going to have a lot of ownership over it. The bottom line is, in order for people to have a successful midterm, for Republicans to have a successful midterm, the main thing is going to be affordability. Now, Could this help? Potentially. I mean, war is good business, believe it or not. Freeing up some of the oil. We got Chevron down there. Like, there are major American corporations down there, so we could have some benefit. But overall, this isn't the top tier issue for us to win in a midterm. But I will tell you that this thus far has been a big victory. The word of caution is regime change is tough. We got to see what happens next. But overall, that this has been a remarkable success to this point. We're talking about taking out one of the worst drug cartel leaders in the world. That's what Maduro was. He was not a president. He was not a legitimate leader. He was an autocrat who was a drug dealer who was sending drugs to this country and openly defying our president and giving access to China. China was controlling Venezuela. That was the plan, and that was what we were up against and what Donald Trump saw. I'm Alex Marlow. We'll be right back. First ever Alex Marlow Show on national radio and on primetime Salem News Channel. So make sure you check out if you guys have the Salem News Channel. I'm getting messages from all across the country, getting messages from our Chicago affiliate, AM 560. Very cool to be there. Of course, 870 in Los Angeles. Let me know. Say hi. Aloha at alexmarlow.com. Let me know what you're liking, what you would like to hear covered on the show. Just a reminder, I got the Alex Marlow Show podcast, which is wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Rumble. And I'm going to be creating additional podcasts every week, 3 additional ones beyond the radio show. So we'll have the live radio show. That'll hit all your podcast feeds. And then also we're going to be doing deep dive interviews there. I'll be getting to opine on some things I think are perhaps a little too frivolous for national live radio. I'm going to do a New Year's resolution show, which those are always really fun. I have one of those coming up this week. And we get some incredible guests lined up coming up on the show and beyond. I talked to Don Jr. this morning. I talked to Laura Trump. I talked to Eric Trump. Talked to the White House. A very warm reception from a lot of my favorites. This is going to be a show where newsmakers will stop by, but also a lot of them who want to sit down for a deep dive. The podcast, Alex Marlow Show podcast. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We do have breaking news. I teased this, but the walls have closed in, and Governor Tim Walz, he's dropping out of the governor's race. So he was up for re-election this year in Minnesota, and this was a guy who was one of the frontrunners to be the Democrat presidential nominee in 2028. This is someone who was on the ticket just a year ago for the Democrats, and now he can't even run for governor in a deep blue state of Minnesota, and it's all because of citizen journalism. It does put a smile on my face, but this unbelievable reporting, in particular by Nick Shirley, but there were some others as well, his sidekick in the viral YouTube video. I think his name was Dave. He didn't even give his last name, as well as some others who had gone through some of the bankrolls of publicly disclosed documents. And the massive levels of fraud that were going on in Minnesota with some of these Somalian migrants in particular, it is just one of the watershed moments, I think, of understanding not just fraud and corruption and abuse of government and what happens when the government gets too big and too bloated, and what happens when one political party is just interested in handing out money in order to create jobs and create wealth for their constituents, for their voter base. The way the Democrats did the Somalian migrant community in Minnesota. This is going to be the tip of the iceberg. This is going to be the tip of the iceberg. We're going to go around to California. We're going to go to Chicago. We're going to go to New York. We're going to turn over every stone. But unfortunately, it took citizen journalists to do it because the government leaders are too corrupt in these areas because the corruption buys them votes. That's how they got a deep blue state like Minnesota, is people like Tim Walz intentionally turning a blind eye. And now he's going to have an interesting spot here because who's going to run for governor now? They'll probably have to come up with a big name. They might come up with an Amy Klobuchar, someone who's had huge levels of power in Minnesota politics while all this corruption was going on. Someone who didn't care about the citizens of Minnesota, the people who were having their tax dollars confiscated at gunpoint, which is essentially what it is, and then handed to people who just got to this country, have no interest in assimilating, do not care about American values at all, do not care about America's culture at all, and just essentially stealing their tax money with fraudulent businesses. And no one lifts a finger to look into it aside from a 23-year-old YouTuber named Nick Shirley. Completely crazy that happened. But I have to say, it did put a smile on my face as someone who was a part of so many citizen journalist stories, quarterbacked by Andrew Breitbart, featuring people like James O'Keefe in Andrew Breitbart's West LA basement at the early stages of Breitbart, to see where the new media revolution has come, where to get a scalp like this is huge. This is a career-defining moment, and you have a 23-year-old independent YouTuber getting it. Tim Walz is gone, and R.I.P. Tampon Tim. I can't wait to see what he does next. I really can't. All right, back to Venezuela. I want to give you some audio because one thing that's also changed with the media now is it used to be that I didn't like seeing Republicans, conservatives show up on the CNNs, the MS Nows of the world, because it was always going to get cut and scrambled and made it so that we always look bad, we're always on defense. But now we're so much better at debating than the establishment left. My colleague Scott Jennings is a perfect example of this. But J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, these guys are so much better, so much smarter, so much fleet of foot than the media that you love to see them mixing it up. And I got some clips of Marco Rubio talking about the Venezuela raid. Let's start with cut 3, guys.
This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy, but instead he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think the message here should be for the world. Look, the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games.
That's exactly right. That's exactly how Trump is. Trump is remarkably consistent. This will be a theme on the show because I go through this. He's not doctrinaire. He's not dogmatic. But he does have a bit of a playbook that he uses, and it's certainly something that this falls into that category. He clearly cares about drugs, illegal immigration. He clearly cares about China's encroachment in our hemisphere. He clearly wants to get costs of oil down, doesn't want the bad guys to have it. And now we're going to take the oil, by the way. We didn't take the oil in Iraq. We're going to take the oil now. And so you see this, and it all adds up. If Maduro's not going to play nice, then of course Trump is going to be like, okay, yeah, fine, we'll take him out. He's doing all these dance parties. That's another one. I don't know if this is true or not, but there's a report that Trump was annoyed by his dancing because Maduro kept putting out footage of himself dancing. Another really fun one to point out is that they also bombed Hugo Chavez's grave, which is not just a grave. It was a shrine that was created for him. They create a shrine for Hugo Chavez and they put it up on a hill. It's got a lot of symbolic nature to it. I'll get into this more on the podcast. Today I'm going to have Frances Martel. We're going to talk to her. She's my world editor at Breitbart News. She knows this stuff like the back of her hand. We'll go through all this. But they built this huge mausoleum, this shrine to Hugo Chavez, and then they actually exhumed Bolivar, who was kind of the spiritual leader of the country. And they put Chavez there. And then Trump just bombed it on the way out. It's so cool. It's just so cool. Just rubbing your nose in it. This is because of the FCC. I'm just going to use the letters. FAFO. Get that, Sean? I'm being careful. I'm already learning. I'm already learning the radio logistics. All right, I got another cut of Rubio. Cut 1, please.
How many U.S. forces are on the ground right now in Venezuela? Are there any?
We don't have U.S. forces on the ground in Venezuela. No, we don't have U.S. forces on the ground. Everyone knows. They were on the ground for about 2 hours when they went to capture Maduro. And I think what the president is saying is very simple, and that is, as president of the United States, he is not going to go around telling people what he's not going to do. He's not going to go around saying, I won't do this, I won't do that. Yes, I care about this issue, but I'll only go so far. He retains all this optionality. In the particular case you're citing, this was, in essence, at its core, a law enforcement function. Okay, the Department of Justice, dating back in the Biden administration, that had a $25 million reward for his capture. So we have a reward for his capture, but we're not going to enforce it. That's the difference between President Trump and everybody else.
It's not just good arguments. It's just great media presentation. He's so crisp. It's so relatable. He's not yelling at anyone. He's not even really debating. He's just explaining what's going on. And this is 100% true, that there's a $25 million reward for information about the capture of Maduro. So, but this is the whole thing. And I wrote a New York Times bestselling book about Joe Biden called Breaking Biden. I did a chapter on him where I think I called it Speak Loudly and Carry a Small Stick. I mean, that's his whole move. He doesn't do anything. He just speaks loudly about it. And just pay attention to who's celebrating today, to who's lamenting all this that's going on, and also pay attention to who's being blatantly hypocritical. I'm trying to keep track of this. The people who are upset, the American left, the European secular socialist white liberal elite, China, Iran, they're very upset. Who's happy? The people of Venezuela are happy. Latins who live in Florida are happy. People who understand that this is actually a dictator who is a narco-terrorist getting deposed without a single American casualty. And no regime change wars, a regime change 3-hour operation with no casualties. I mean, that's as good as it gets. Now, it's going to be messy, as I said, because it's going to be messy from here, but it's amazing where we're at. And the next thing to track is the hypocrisy that we're going to see. I want you to check out, I got some cuts of Chuck Schumer. Here's Chuck Schumer in 2020 on Trump's Venezuela policy from the first Trump administration. Cut 4, please.
Maybe the best metaphor was his claim to bring democracy to Venezuela. There was a big policy there. It flopped. If the policy was working, Juan Guaido wouldn't be in the balcony here. He'd be in Venezuela. He'd be sitting in the president's palace, or at least waging a fight to win. He's here. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break.
The Juan Guaido thing, tried to install Juan Guaido as president, which was a John Bolton joint. That was a John Bolton operation. It's so funny about this, that Trump's Venezuela policy did not succeed in his first administration, which was one of the few things in Trump's foreign policy that was not A+. And it was John Bolton's portfolio. So arch never Trumper, John Bolton, the guy who's made millions of dollars and is under deep investigation now for being a never Trumper. It was really his stuff that didn't work out. But very noteworthy to hear how Chuck Schumer, if that's how he was in 2020, surely he was very, very happy this weekend. Right, Sean? We're going to see that he was a happy Chuck Schumer on Cut 5?
Maduro's a horrible, horrible person. But you don't treat lawlessness with other lawlessness. And that's what's happened here. The American people this morning, George, are scratching their heads in wonderment and in fear of what the president has proposed. The United States will run Venezuela.
So, interesting. Now we all care about international law. It's not that we shouldn't do whatever we can to take out the bad guys, is that we need to care about it's international law. That's what we need to rely on the international community of America haters, people who have allowed for all of this to go on to this point. God forbid Trump does anything to try to do something different, to try to buck the status quo that didn't work. And this is where Trump is such an amazing figure, a revolutionary figure, is because he's the one who says, you know what, this tactic has not worked forever. So this guy is just there. People are just, when we come back from the break, I'm going to read from Caleb Caruso, who is my Venezuela-based reporter. He fled. He made it out. He's in Europe now. But for years, we at Breitbart, we had a reporter who was stationed in Venezuela. And I'm going to read to you some of his personal accounts of what life was like there. It was people flaying and eating dog on the street. It was bartering for bread. It was all of the worst horrors imaginable. And this is something that people are waking up after Trump wages a successful raid with no American casualties. And they wake up and they don't think, well, at least the people of Venezuela have a chance now. No, they think Trump is a criminal. That's always where they go. You guys might know I've promoted on the show quite a bit, Breaking the Law, my latest New York Times bestselling book. The lawfare against President Trump, they feel like the best way to stop him is not at the ballot box, is with lawfare. It's with using the law, trying to impeach him for stuff. And that wages the stakes for this year. That wages the stakes for 2026. Because should the Republicans lose the midterm, the number one goal of the Democrat Party will try to impeach Trump. Hopefully get him removed from office, but at least tie him up in all sorts of legal headaches that he narrowly survived last time. But why do we want to do that? Why do we want to give it that risk? We need to be fired up. We need to be engaged. Or else it's just going to be another lawfare bonanza. And that's what they're trying today, saying Trump is some sort of a criminal for taking out the bad guys. I'm Alex Marlow. We'll be right back. Radio legend Sean McConnell worked for Elder, worked for Prager. I've been visiting Sean from time to time for so many years. Roger Wicker helps us edit. Rick Locke runs the studio here. Garrett Shawley, Tech Ops Director. Greg Eben is our producer, who I brought back to me after he was my producer at SiriusXM, where I was the morning host for 7 years. Great to have Greg back. Special shout outs to Larry Solov, editor, the president, CEO, owner of Breitbart News. Craig Kitchen, my agent, who's a radio legend, and Phil Boyce, who runs Talk at Salem, a radio legend himself, all helping me get on the air. And we're going to be doing this, guys. It's going to be a lot to do, and I'm excited to be here. Remember, podcast feeds, I'll be podcasting right after this, so you'll be loaded up with content. Alex Marlow Show, wherever you get your pods, really important. I mentioned that I wanted to share with you Caleb Caruso, who's one of my writers at Breitbart. He had a series called My Socialist Hell. It was 20 years of decay in Venezuela, where he goes through witnessing toilet paper shortages, desperate people scavenging through garbage to find food for their families, bread lines, a systemic failure of public utilities, dogs flayed in broad daylight for meat, corruption, lack of proper medicine and health access, weighing stacks of cash, and so much more. And he says it's all true. And he provides, of course, images, firsthand reporting. And this has all taken place since 1999 when this quote-unquote Bolivarian revolution started by Hugo Chavez, changing the Constitution and morphing laws that to fit the wills of a dictator. And he notes how he had to take expired medicine because that was the best he could get. He couldn't get the real thing. He couldn't get things that were fresh and contemporary. Health access was not available to him. Watching people bartering for food and medicine. All of this is because socialism is devastating. Communism is devastating, and especially when you have an authoritarian terrorist narco state. And we got some warnings here because we got Mamdani in New York, who has called Venezuelan's dictator Maduro a dictator, which is a positive. But he got sworn in over the weekend on the 1st, as they do in New York City. And then check out this clip, please. Let's play cut 8. Play cut 8, guys.
We will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
And I thought of that quote a lot when I was revisiting some of Caleb's reporting for us over the years at Breitbart. The warmth of collectivism. The warmth of collectivism is why that he is a younger brother who can't fend for himself because he's got mental conditions, and him trying to scavenge for food, trying to barter for food, having to weigh cash, having to scavenge through garbage. And that's what it was like there. And it was all because initially a cult of personality with Hugo Chavez, but Chavez is gone. And Maduro is a even less likable authoritarian narco-terrorist. And it's good that he's going to be held to account. It just is. So, of course, what comes next, who knows? But it is a huge improvement to see that he's gone. And let's not be too negative yet. There'll be a lot of work to do, but let's not be too negative yet. Also really interesting that Trump took Mamdani's phone call. Mamdani said, I called the president and spoke with him directly to register my opposition to this act. These guys love authoritarians now. They love dictators. If Trump wins a Democratic election, they say that's not democratic, but if an authoritarian narco-terrorist is leading a country into oblivion, that's fine with them so long as that person's on the left. Remember, their whole worldview is, it's almost not even leftism anymore. It's just Trump is wrongism. That's all it is. And you see this with people like Chris Murphy. I got clips of him who was calling for a more strong approach towards Venezuela and then saying Trump is only doing this because he's making his friends in the oil industry and Wall Street rich. Joe Biden in 1989, let's go after the drug lords where they live with an international strike force. No safe haven for narco-terrorists. Big Joe Biden said that. Now who knows where he even is right now. He's probably asleep. Probably eating an ice cream cone. He's probably going to eat a triple decker. What? That's what he does, man. He's just an ice cream cone eater. And I note all of his favorite ice cream cone brands, and I do avoid them. I won't bring them up on the show. I'm not familiar with every single advertiser across the country. I don't want to offend anyone, but I always try to make sure that I try to go to a different ice cream shop when I'm out with all the children. All right, I think that's a good effort for today. I recommend all of you go to Breitbart.com. We have an app there for breaking news. There's so much to do. Recommend you check out all those podcast feeds, and just know that each and every day in this show, when we record live and on our podcast feeds, I'm going to try to give you the hardest news, most entertaining news, some of the best guests around, and I will not waste your time. That is one thing you can count on from me. Correspond with me, aloha@alexmarlow.com. We will get those phone lines opened up as well, so we'll have a caller component to the show. But this is an amazing country. I'm fighting for it. I'm fighting for my children. I'm fighting for you as well. This is the Alex Marlow Show. I'm glad to be with you, and I'll see you tomorrow.